The ambush, 300 words. Petty Officer First Class Jordan Hayes stood in the Naval Station Norfolk mess hall line, exhausted from a week of what everyone assumed was clerical work in the administrative building. At 29, with a slight build and quiet demeanor, she'd become invisible to most personnel on base, exactly as intended for someone whose actual job was so classified that even her service record was mostly redacted. "Hey, Hayes," Lieutenant Commander Brock Davidson called out loudly from his table, surrounded by his usual crew of junior officers. "Heard you finally got assigned to a real ship. About time admin staff got some sea duty. Maybe you'll learn what actual sailors do instead of pushing papers." Laughter rippled through the mess hall. Hayes had been the target of Brock's condescension for months. He was conventional Navy through and through, believed that anyone not on a ship or in direct combat roles was wasting uniform. His father was an admiral, which made him untouchable in his own mind. "I'm sure she'll do fine filing reports at sea," another officer added. "Someone has to handle the paperwork while real sailors run operations." Hayes collected her tray and moved toward an empty table, ignoring the comments as she'd been trained to do. Her job required her to maintain a low profile, to be forgotten, to blend into the administrative background of the base while actually serving a completely different function, but Brock wasn't done. He stood up, projecting his voice across the crowded mess hall. "You know what I heard? Hayes here applied for SEAL training twice and got rejected both times. Couldn't hack the physical standards, obviously. But hey, at least the Navy found something she could do, answering phones and scheduling meetings." The mess hall went uncomfortably quiet. This wasn't just teasing, this was public humiliation, and it crossed lines that even Brock's usual targets recognized as excessive. Hayes set down her tray carefully, turned to face Brock, and made a decision that would blow 6 months of careful cover but was absolutely necessary. "Lieutenant Commander Davidson," her voice carried clearly through the silent mess hall, tone professional but with an edge that made several senior enlisted personnel sit up straighter, "You're correct that I applied to SEAL training twice. The first time was when I was 19 and enlisted. I was rejected for being female, this was before the ban was lifted. The second time was when I was 22. I was accepted, completed training, and served with SEAL Team 7 for 5 years before being assigned to my current position." Brock's confident smirk faltered. "That's bullshit. You're an admin clerk." "Everyone knows, what everyone knows," Hayes interrupted calmly, "is my cover assignment. My actual position is classified, but since you've decided to publicly challenge my qualifications, I'm authorized to clarify, I'm a SEAL, Lieutenant Commander. Have been for 7 years. My current assignment keeps me shore-based for operational security reasons I can't discuss. But every morning while you're getting coffee, I'm running a 10-mile training evolution. Every afternoon while you're in meetings, I'm maintaining tactical certifications. And every evening while you're at the O Club, I'm reviewing intelligence for missions you'll never know about." The mess hall was absolutely silent now. Master Chief Rivera, the senior enlisted advisor who'd been eating quietly in the corner, stood up and walked over, his expression suggesting this was about to get very interesting. "Petty Officer Hayes," Master Chief Rivera said formally, "would you like me to call the base commander to verify your credentials for the lieutenant commander? Since he seems to doubt them." Brock's face had gone from confident to uncertain to pale. If Hayes was telling the truth, he'd just publicly insulted and humiliated a SEAL, someone several levels above him in terms of capability even if technically junior in rank. "That won't be necessary, Master Chief," Hayes said. "But I would like Lieutenant Commander Davidson to understand something. The reason you don't see me on ships or in combat zones isn't because I can't handle them. It's because my current mission requires I maintain a low profile while serving in a capacity that supports SEAL operations you're not cleared to know about. Your assumption that administrative assignment equals incompetence is exactly the kind of thinking that gets people killed in the field." She pulled out her military ID, not the standard one, but the red-bordered credentials that indicated Special Operations assignment. Master Chief Rivera examined it, nodded, and handed it back. "Credentials confirmed," Rivera announced to the mess hall. Petty Officer Hayes is exactly who she says she is. Lieutenant Commander Davidson, I strongly suggest you apologize. Brock stood frozen, his face cycling through emotions as he processed the magnitude of his mistake. He'd just publicly humiliated a SEAL based on assumptions, in front of 200 personnel, many of whom would spread this story across the entire base by evening. I apologize, Petty Officer Hayes. I made assumptions without facts. Accepted, Hayes said simply. But understand this, sir, next time you see someone in administrative assignment, in support roles, in positions that seem less than whatever you consider real Navy work, consider that you might not know the whole story. Some of the most critical missions are run by people you'd never recognize as operators. That's not weakness. That's tactical advantage. She picked up her tray and moved to sit with Master Chief Rivera, leaving Brock standing in the middle of the mess hall, his reputation in tatters and his assumptions publicly destroyed. As she sat down, Master Chief Rivera leaned over quietly. You just blew 6 months of cover. Worth it, Hayes replied. His attitude was getting dangerous, spreads through junior officers like a virus. Better to correct it now than let it fester. Command is going to want a conversation. I know. Hayes finally allowed herself a small smile. But watching his face when he realized he'd just tried to humiliate a SEAL. Absolutely worth whatever paperwork comes next. Across the mess hall, Lieutenant Ethan Cross, an intelligence officer who'd been quietly watching the entire exchange, caught her eye and raised his coffee cup in a subtle salute of respect. Hayes nodded back, recognizing something in his expression, understanding, admiration, and interest that went beyond professional courtesy. The mess hall slowly returned to normal conversation levels, but everyone present knew they'd just witnessed something significant, the moment Brock Davidson learned that assumptions based on appearance could be catastrophically wrong, and for Hayes, it was the beginning of something she hadn't expected when she walked into that mess hall, the end of hiding, and maybe, the beginning of being seen by someone who actually mattered. Truth and connection, 300 words. The summons came 2 hours after the mess hall incident. Commander Patricia Wells, Hayes' actual commanding officer, wanted to see her immediately in the SCIF, the sensitive compartmented information facility where classified operations were discussed. Hayes entered the secure room to find not just Commander Wells, but Lieutenant Ethan Cross, the intelligence officer who'd saluted her earlier. Sit, Wells said, not unkindly. You blew your cover. Yes, ma'am. It was necessary to correct dangerous attitudes that could compromise future operations. Explain. Wells's tone suggested she already agreed but wanted Hayes's tactical reasoning. Lieutenant Commander Davidson's attitude, that administrative assignments equal incompetence, creates operational vulnerabilities. If he believes support staff are weak or incompetent, he'll underestimate enemy support personnel, miss intelligence opportunities, and potentially compromise his own people by not respecting the capabilities of those in non-combat roles. His thinking needed correction before it infected more junior officers. Wells nodded slowly. Lieutenant Cross, your assessment. Ethan leaned forward. Petty Officer Hayes is right. Davidson's attitude has been noted in multiple intelligence briefings. He dismisses analyst input, ignores support staff observations, operates with blind spots created by his own assumptions. Today's incident, while exposing Hayes' actual assignment, also created a teachable moment for approximately 200 personnel who witnessed it. Agreed. Wells pulled up files. Hayes, your shore-based cover is compromised. I'm reassigning you to direct SEAL support operations, embedded with intelligence teams, no more administrative cover. You'll work with Lieutenant Cross's unit analyzing and planning missions. Is that acceptable? Yes, ma'am. Hayes felt relief. 6 months of pretending to be incompetent had been wearing on her soul. Dismissed. Lieutenant Cross, brief her on current operations. After Wells left, Hayes and Ethan sat alone in the SCIF. He pulled up classified files, but before diving into operations, he said quietly, "What you did took courage. Most people would have stayed quiet, maintained cover, avoided confrontation. Most people aren't SEALs. We're trained to identify threats and neutralize them. Davidson's attitude was a threat. You're right. Ethan studied her with open curiosity. I've read your file, the unclassified parts. 2 tours in Afghanistan, counterterrorism operations, multiple commendations. Why'd they pull you for shore-based intelligence support? Hayes hesitated, then decided honesty was tactical. Injury. Took shrapnel in my left leg during an extraction. Healed fine, but it ended my fieldwork. Navy offered medical discharge or reassignment. I chose reassignment because I wasn't done serving. Shore-based intelligence work lets me use my operational experience to support active teams. That must have been difficult. Going from operator to support. Every day. Hayes's honesty surprised herself. But watching missions succeed because of intelligence I helped develop. That helps. It's different contribution, but it matters. It does. Ethan's voice carried conviction. I'm prior enlisted, did 4 years as a Navy corpsman before getting my commission and transitioning to intelligence. I understand that transition from doing to supporting. It's not less important, but it feels less significant sometimes. You were a corpsman. Hayes looked at him with new respect. Corpsmen were the medical personnel who deployed with Marines, often in the most dangerous positions. 2 deployments with Marines in Helmand Province. Saw combat, treated injuries, lost people I couldn't save. Ethan's expression held old pain. Got my degree using GI Bill benefits, came back as an officer in intelligence because I realized the best way to save lives was preventing bad situations before they happened rather than treating casualties after. That's good tactical thinking. So is what you did today. Davidson needed that correction, and you delivered it perfectly, firm, factual, without unnecessary aggression. That's leadership. They worked through operational briefings for the next 2 hours, but Hayes noticed Ethan watching her with interest beyond professional. When they finally finished, he asked, "Would you want to grab coffee? Off base, somewhere we can talk without security classifications." Hayes studied him, this intelligence officer who'd been a corpsman, who understood transition and loss and finding new ways to serve. Yes. But I need to be clear about something, I don't date casually. Too much operational tempo, too much classified work. If we're doing this, I need to know you understand that world. I do understand. And I'm not casual either. Ethan's honesty matched hers. I've been watching you for months, trying to figure out why an obviously competent woman was pretending to struggle with basic administrative work. Today answered that question. And now I'd like to know the person behind the operator. Okay. Hayes made a decision. Coffee. Tonight. There's a place downtown where operators go, quiet, understands operational security, good coffee. I know the place. 2000 hours. See you there. That evening, in a coffee shop that catered to military personnel who needed spaces where they could discuss unclassified aspects of classified lives, Hayes and Ethan talked for 4 hours. Not about operations, those stayed compartmented, but about the challenge of military service, the weight of losing teammates, the struggle to find purpose after injury or transition. I lost 3 Marines I was treating, Ethan said quietly. All in one day during a complex ambush. Did everything right, textbook medical care, but their injuries were too severe. I still see their faces. I lost my swim buddy during my last deployment, Hayes shared. IED we didn't detect. She was 2 feet ahead of me. If I'd been in front instead. You'd be dead instead of her, and she'd be carrying the same guilt you are. Ethan reached across the table, covered her hand with his. Survivor's guilt is logical but not rational. You know that. Knowing it doesn't make it easier. No. But maybe having someone who understands makes it more bearable. They talked until the coffee shop closed, then walked along the waterfront, the conversation shifting from trauma to hopes, from professional challenges to personal dreams. "I want to serve 20 years, Hayes said. "Find ways to keep contributing even as my body ages and operational tempo becomes harder. Maybe teach, maybe train, maybe intelligence work like what we'll be doing together. I want similar. Serve until retirement, then maybe teach at the academy or work contractor intelligence. Use everything I've learned to help the next generation be better prepared." Ethan stopped walking, turned to face her. "But I also want something else. Partnership. Not just professional, personal. Someone who understands this life, who doesn't need explanations about why I can't talk about work, who gets that service is identity, not just occupation. That's what I want too." Hayes felt something in her chest loosen, permission to want more than just mission, to believe that operators could have relationships. "But it's complicated. We'll be working together now, same unit, direct operational connection. We disclose to command, follow fraternization protocols, maintain professionalism during work. Off-duty, we're just Ethan and Jordan, trying to build something real." He stepped closer. "If you want that. I do." Hayes closed the distance between them, and their first kiss was gentle, careful, two people with trauma and duty learning to trust enough to be vulnerable. When they broke apart, Ethan smiled. "So, tomorrow at work, you're Petty Officer Hayes and I'm Lieutenant Cross. And tonight?" "Tonight you're Jordan, and I'm Ethan, and we're just two people who found each other in a mess hall confrontation." "Best outcome of blowing my cover," Jordan admitted. "Definitely worth the paperwork," Ethan agreed, pulling her close for another kiss under the Norfolk streetlights. For the first time in months, Hayes felt like she could be both, the SEAL and the woman, the operator and the person, the warrior and someone who might deserve love. All because she'd refused to let assumptions and bias go unchallenged in a mess hall. Sometimes, the most important battles weren't fought in combat zones. Sometimes, they happened over lunch trays and coffee cups, where courage meant standing up for truth even when it cost you comfortable anonymity. And sometimes, that courage led not just to vindication, but to connection with someone who saw all of you and chose to stay anyway. New operations, 300 words. 3 months later, Hayes and Cross had become the intelligence unit's most effective team. Her operational experience combined with his analytical skills created mission planning that was saving lives downrange. Their personal relationship, properly disclosed and approved by command, had deepened into partnership that balanced professional respect with genuine love. But the mess hall incident's ripples continued spreading. Lieutenant Commander Brock Davidson had been quietly reassigned to a desk position after multiple complaints about his leadership style surfaced following the public incident. The base implemented new training on recognizing operational security needs and not making assumptions about personnel assignments. And Hayes found herself asked to speak at the Naval Academy about her experiences as a female SEAL and the importance of support operations. Standing before 300 midshipmen, Hayes told her story without classified details but with complete honesty about the challenges, the bias, the constant need to prove herself, and the moment in a mess hall when she decided that silence cost more than exposure. "Some of you will be SEALs, some pilots, some submariners, some intelligence officers, some supply corps," she said. "Every role matters. Every assignment has strategic value. The moment you start believing that your particular job is the only real Navy work, you've created a vulnerability that enemies can exploit and allies can't trust." After the speech, she found Ethan waiting outside the auditorium. "That was powerful. Several midshipmen asked me how they could request assignment to your unit. Tell them to focus on being excellent at whatever they do. Excellence is portable." They walked back to the parking lot hand in hand, no longer hiding, no longer pretending, just two operators who'd found each other. "Command approved my transfer," Ethan said. "I'm being promoted to lieutenant commander and taking over the entire SEAL Intelligence Support Division. I want you as my deputy. That's a big job for both of us. We can handle it. Together." He pulled her close. Besides, I like working with you. Professionally and personally. Same. Hayes smiled, something she'd done more in 3 months with Ethan than in the previous 3 years. What about the fraternization concerns? Different ranks, same unit. Already addressed. Commander Wells will be your direct supervisor for administrative purposes. I'll supervise operations, she'll supervise personnel. Clean chain of command, no conflicts. Ethan kissed her forehead. I told you, if we're doing this, we do it right. 1 year later, at a ceremony honoring distinguished service members, Petty Officer First Class Hayes was promoted to Chief Petty Officer and received a commendation for her intelligence work supporting multiple successful SEAL operations. Lieutenant Commander Cross stood in the audience, pride evident on his face. That evening, in their shared apartment off base, surrounded by operational manuals and intelligence reports, Ethan got down on one knee with a ring. Jordan Hayes, you're the strongest, smartest, most courageous person I've ever known. You taught me that true strength means standing up for truth even when it costs you. You showed me that vulnerability and capability aren't opposites, they're complementary. Will you marry me? Yes. Jordan didn't hesitate, pulling him up into a kiss that sealed the promise. But I'm keeping my name professionally. Hayes has operational history. Of course. Wouldn't expect anything else from a SEAL. Their wedding 6 months later was small, mostly military personnel, many of them from the mess hall that day when Hayes had revealed herself. Master Chief Rivera gave a toast about courage taking many forms, sometimes including the courage to stop hiding. Brock Davidson, who'd quietly reached out to apologize properly months after the incident, had sent a card acknowledging that Hayes had taught him the most important lesson of his career: never assume you know someone's story. But the best moment came when one of Hayes's former teammates, a SEAL she'd served with in Afghanistan, took her aside and said, "Ghost, you've built something good here. Mission success on the personal front. Proud of you." "Thanks, Reaper. Means a lot." Looking around at the gathered friends and family, at Ethan talking with her father, at the life she built after injury forced her from fieldwork, Hayes realized something crucial: revealing herself in that mess hall hadn't ended her operational effectiveness, it had expanded it. She was still a SEAL. Still an operator. Just executing a different kind of mission now, one that involved training others, developing intelligence, and proving that warriors could have lives beyond combat. The mess hall incident had tried to humiliate her, to reduce her to assumptions and bias. Instead, it had freed her to be completely herself, operator and wife, SEAL and intelligence analyst, warrior and woman, building a life with someone who saw all of it and loved her more for the wholeness rather than despite it. Sometimes the most important moments happen not on battlefields but in mess halls. And sometimes the greatest victories came not from hiding who you were, but from having the courage to stand up and declare your truth, regardless of cost. Hayes had done that. And it had changed everything.